So, this is a video I originally made back in February after the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, my computer sort of broke while I was putting the finishing touches on the video, and I am just now getting around to remaking it. So, do me a favor and act like it's February and that you just watched the Super Bowl halftime show with Kendrick Lamar. Cool? Okay, let's do this. So, that whole Super Bowl performance was pretty crazy, right? I mean, regardless of whether or not you enjoyed it, you have to admit that a rapper doing a mostly solo performance at the Super Bowl and performing the biggest diss record of all time to an audience of millions at home is kind of a big deal. Again, regardless of whether or not you enjoyed the performance, the mere fact that it happened is one of the biggest moments in the history of rap music. And that's big because rap is a genre that is infamous for sustaining itself by eating its own artists and profiting off their funerals. I mean, if it wasn't for Drake literally being too successful to die, Not Like Us and Kendrick's performance would have served as any other rapper's nail in the coffin. But to me, what's more impressive than a hip-hop artist being the face of the biggest annual concert of the year, or that the biggest moment of that performance was a f***ing diss record, was that the two rappers involved in it were Kendrick Lamar and Drake, two men who are almost 40 years old and have managed to not just survive, but consistently thrive within the music industry as hip-hop artists. If you go back through the entire history of rap and hip-hop, you'll find it damn near impossible to see a rapper over the age of 35 that is the face of the genre and still making quality and popular music at that point in their career. But in the 50 or so years that hip-hop has existed, there's only been like 3, maybe 4 or 5 guys who fit that same description. Rock and roll, pop music, country, jazz, metal. There are countless ageless wonders who managed to have hit records and albums across multiple decades in those genres. One-hit wonders and short-lived artists are prevalent in all genres of music, but there's something about the way that rappers fall off that is very different and has always been interesting to me. After years of being an avid fan of hip-hop, and more specifically after reflecting on 3 of my favorite shows that address this topic, I have come to the realization that, more so than any other genre in the music industry, rap is a fucking trap.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47! It's a trap!
At this point, I have completely run out of ways to introduce the Boondocks in these videos. This was never meant to be a Boondocks-specific channel, but you wouldn't be able to tell from how many times I've talked about the show over the last few years. Clearly, I love the Boondocks, and I love it for many different reasons. One of my favorite aspects of the show is how it depicts rappers and the culture of hip-hop, specifically the 2000s era of bling rap. In terms of commercialism, hedonism, and other bad isms, this era of hip-hop was definitely the worst. The bling era of hip-hop was the result of gangster rap being fused with catchy pop rap. Where the pop rap of the 90s had a more laid-back and chill vibe to its take on an extravagant and luxurious lifestyle, the 2000s was much more loud, flashy, and cartoonish. So who better to serve as a representation of that era's music and its artists than a loudmouth rapper from the slums of Georgia who wore big platinum jewelry, rocked giant afro puffs, and made songs about stomping people in the nuts.
Stomp 'em in the nuts, we'll stomp 'em in the nuts, we'll stomp 'em in the nuts, I'ma stomp 'em in the nuts.
Oh, and of course his rapper name had to be something hilariously outlandish like Thugnificent. Thugnificent is officially introduced into the Boondocks in Season 2, Episode 5, fittingly titled The Story of Thugnificent. Off the strength of hits like Mood 'em Butt Cheeks and Stomp 'em in the Nuts,
Stomp 'em in the nuts, we'll stomp 'em in the nuts, we'll stomp 'em in the nuts, I'ma stomp 'em in the nuts.
he gets enough money to move himself and his crew into the affluent suburbs of Woodcrest, where the main characters also happen to live. As soon as he arrives, his destructively lavish lifestyle is instantly felt by the neighborhood. He's blasting music, riding big trucks through the streets, and throwing parties that last all throughout the night. He's living the life that you would expect of a successful, mainstream rapper with a big record deal. Life is good for Thugnificent in his introduction, but as the show goes on, we start to see more and more cracks in the lavish image that he portrays. We find out that the jewelry that he and his crew wear is fake. We find out the grand mansion he lives in isn't as grand as he makes it out to be. We find out that his music is not selling as well as previously thought. This all snowballs into the Season 3 episode titled Riches to Rags, which fully depicts the rapper's downfall from chart-topping success to everyday average Joe working at UPS.
Yeah, man, all the paper is in reality shows right now, nigga. The music industry's dead.
Thugnificent found lightning in a bottle at the start of his career and was able to capitalize on that and become a rich and successful rapper. But as Dr. Dre once told Kendrick Lamar regarding what it's like to make it big as a hip-hop artist, anybody can get it. The hard part is keeping it. Thugnificent became popular because people loved his sound and his image, but once that sound and image was no longer popular, he wasn't able to adapt to the quickly changing tides of the music industry. Because of that, he became another casualty to the game. This is the very reason why many artists, not just rappers, fall into obscurity. The difference between many rappers and artists of other genres is that many times, once they fall off, rappers are not able to find other ways of making money outside of getting day jobs like Thugnificent had to do. As I said before, there are a bunch of artists from other genres that are able to live very comfortable and sometimes even continue their lavish lives off of the few hits that they made in their heyday, just performing wherever they might still have fans. For anyone who knows what the Warped Tour is, that alone is a great example of what I'm talking about here. So many rappers got into the music industry thinking that they would have a similarly long-running fate, only to have everything cut short and for them to be left with nothing when it's all said and done. The story of Thugnificent is a warning. It's a cautionary tale of how quickly fame, money, and power can come and go. And if you aren't smart about how you sustain it and plan for your future, you can end up losing it all in what feels like the blink of an eye.
I always wanted to do this rap thing. And then, by some miracle, I actually pulled it off. I just thought it would last long.
Another show that I've talked about many times on this channel and also covers this topic of rap being a trap is a great series called Atlanta. Unlike the Boondocks, which focuses on many different aspects of black culture and doesn't really have a main plot or storyline, Atlanta is all about a rapper named Paperboy and the trials and tribulations that he and his friends face while they try to make it in the music industry. Paperboy, similarly to Thugnificent, is a rapper from the slums of Georgia. He's missing the Afro puffs though, so not one-to-one. But unlike Thugnificent, who was a sort of caricature or clown, Paperboy is a legit hard-nosed drug dealer who commands respect from those around him. He's not in the music industry to f around and have a good time. He wants to get paid, stay paid, and make sure he never has to go back to living like a savage in the slums of Atlanta. The issue, much like Thugnificent, is that despite his early success in the start of the show, his look, sound, and criminal public image quickly become outdated, and he's forced to adapt in order to last longer in the music industry. Al, or Paperboy, has one of my favorite character arcs in Atlanta because he starts out as someone who's too stubborn to change their ways, even though who he currently is actively holding him back, but he evolves not to be someone he's not, but to be someone who's crafty enough to get what he needs without compromising who he is at his core. Whether it's labels that don't understand the culture but still think they know what's best for his career, or people discriminating against him for his public image as a heartless thug before even getting to know him, or even the pressures of his fans to stay real and not conform to the industry, even though not conforming to the industry could lead him to getting left behind. Despite all the typical rapper-specific trials and tribulations that Al faces throughout the series, he manages to adapt and overcome them. After spending the first 2 seasons grinding and coming to terms with who he is as a man and as an artist, we see in season 3 that it all starts to pay off and he becomes one of the biggest rappers in the world. The issue comes in season 4 when, in the blink of an eye, he makes the dreaded evolution all men eventually face, going from bro to unk.
Little niggas is from 8 to 14. YNs is from 15 to 25. 26 to 35, 34, that's big bro. 36 to 44, that's unk them.
Suddenly, he's no longer the cool new rapper that everyone loves. Now he's the old OG that the new generation struggles to even remember.
I'm Paperboy. The rapper, Paperboy, you know?
Oh, you the dude my dad bought.
His skill as a rapper has not changed. His core audience has gotten older, but they still haven't changed much either. The issue is that the industry has changed, and the average fan is starting to move on from him and his era of rapper. It's in the season 4 episode titled Born to Die that we see all of this go down. The episode depicts everything I just explained about Paperboy quickly becoming a washed up has-been, and some fellow rappers explain to him how he can still make money despite this inevitably happening. Basically, he has to get a young white avatar, which, yes, sounds hilarious and ridiculous, but also has some real-world merit to it. But while this is a funny example of the way a rapper can stay relevant, the realization this episode brought me to was that damn near every rapper that has managed to stay relevant and successful over the years didn't maintain their success through their music, but rather through their business ventures. Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, Ludacris, 50 Cent, Ice-T, Jay-Z, Common, Kanye West, they're all famous for other besides music. Granted, some of them still do make music, but I would argue most people who are current fans of these artists wouldn't really care about any new music that they might release going forward. What was the last Ludacris song you remember? How many albums has Ice Cube dropped in the last 15 years? Snoop Dogg just dropped an album like 2 months ago. Tell me one song from that bitch. I'm guessing you can't, but I bet you remember seeing Snoop perform at Trump's inauguration ball. Which, man, what a disappointment that was. But anyway, my point is that these are all rappers who in one way or another realize that rap is not forever. Hell, it's not even close to long lasting except for a very exceptional few. So many rappers of earlier eras fell off into the void when people stopped listening to their music, but these rappers and many others like them realized that they needed another way to reach the masses, whether that be fashion, acting, starting their own labels, or their own businesses completely unrelated to music. Is Pearl Jam starring in the next Fast and Furious movie? Does Metallica have their own brand of liquor? Does Michael Bublé have a new line of sneakers? Does Mariah Carey have a small ownership stake in an NBA team? If they do, I haven't heard about it, but I have heard about the other rappers I just named and many others having outside ventures like those. For whatever reason, rappers don't have the same shelf life as other artists, and it's been interesting to see rappers realize this over the years and get better and better at diversifying their portfolios to stay relevant and stay rich. Speaking of rappers and portfolios, I finally got around to watching a show created by one of my favorite rappers on Netflix. It's called The Vince Staples Show, and it stars Vince Staples, the rapper. Vince Staples is kind of an anomaly in music. And by anomaly, I mean that there's not really a box that you can put him in. Yes, he's a gangster rapper from Long Beach, California, but a majority of his music is not the typical West Coast gangster rap sound that you might think of. From his interviews and his appearances, he always comes off as a very funny person, but if you really look at him during these clips of him saying funny shit, everybody else is laughing, but most of the time Vince looks very stern. Almost as if none of what he's saying is meant to be funny, but it just kind of naturally is.
Favorite thing to do outside?
Go inside.
Are you gonna start your third album or master your chili recipe?
It's my business.
Grossest thing you've ever seen or smelled?
Where do y'all be at to be having answers to these things?
And despite being a popular rapper, he's always been very private about his personal life, so there's never really been a sense as a fan that I actually know the real Vince Staples. One thing I can say for sure about Vince Staples, though, is that he's definitely not dumb. On the contrary, he seems to be very smart, and smart people tend to realize things that most others don't. Vince Staples can rap, but by his own admission, he's never really cared much about rapping outside of a way to make a name for himself and make money. Rapping is just a job for him, not necessarily a passion. Unlike many artists who choose music as a profession, it doesn't seem like Vince wants to rap forever. He wants to do it while it's profitable, and as soon as it stops providing for him, he will most likely stop and will never make music again. So when I heard that he created his own show somewhat about his life, I imagined it would be about the struggles he faced as a rapper. I think the most surprising thing about the show is just how little of actual rap-related subject matter there is. It's as if Vince purposefully added as little rap content into the show as possible as a sort of protest of the idea that a rapper's only important trait is the fact that they're a rapper. The Vince Staples Show is sort of a meta example of the topic of this video. Vince Staples, the real-life artist in person, figured out early in his career that rap was a trap, and he knew he needed to find more reliable ways to make money. So he created the Vince Staples Show, which is all about Vince Staples, the rapper, in the show, realizing that rap is a trap and trying to find a more reliable way to make money.
In order for you to get paid, the people have to be entertained. They have to laugh, they have to dance, they have to get lit. But one day, eventually, they stop getting lit. And when that day comes, and it surely will, we still need our money.
Basically, the running plot of the show is that Vince has an idea to make his own brand of cereal, and he goes through some hoops and hurdles to get the funding to start the company. During that process, a whole bunch of other bullshit happens, but the cereal idea is the sort of connecting thread throughout most of the episodes. The show is funny, dark, weird, and even pretty sad at certain points. Also, season 2 is coming out soon, and I definitely want to wait to watch that before I give my full thoughts on anything. Most importantly to me as a fan of Vince Staples and someone who wants to see rappers thrive and not fall off into obscurity, it's a really good sign of things getting better. Vince is my age. He grew up watching the same rise and falls of bling-era rappers that I did, and now that he's become the next generation of rap artists, he's shown that it's possible to learn from the mistakes of the past and push for more than just what rap and the music industry can provide. Rap and hip-hop have become one of, if not the most popular and influential music genres in the world. But despite that, there still seems to be a negative connotation that comes with it. Almost like a lack of respect for rap as an art form from a lot of people, even those who listen to it. Due to many factors, mostly racism, I'm sure that stigma can never really be shaken. Because of that, I believe labels will always see rap as a trap to ensnare unsuspecting black men and women by selling them a dream of endless fame, money, and power, knowing that the end result will almost surely be an empty tragedy. Careers in artists should always be looked at as more of a stepping stone than a final destination. People and fans can be extremely fickle when it comes to what they like and what they care about. You can never really be sure of when it is that people will stop caring about you and your art. That's why, to avoid the trap, you have to be able to see it for what it is, and never get complacent or too sure of your standing within it. Artists should always be willing to branch out and find new ways to express themselves, because the worst thing an artist's work can be seen as is dry and uninspired. For any artists who may be watching this video, remember that it's critically important to find your creative comfort zone, but it's equally as important to never get too comfortable there. Unfortunately, the industry of selling art has always been ripe with exploitation. And as someone who considers themselves to be an artist, I never want to see another artist get exploited and lose everything that they worked for. When I finished watching Atlanta and watched Al sit back on that porch knowing that he had achieved everything that he wanted, and then when I realized that this was written by a real rapper, Donald Glover or Childish Gambino, it made me happy to see that this is an artist who understands the game and avoided the trap. And I felt the same way when I watched the Vince Staples show and see here's another artist younger than Donald Glover who's also seen rap for the trap that it is and is finding his way to work around it. It's not much, but it's definitely hope for the future.